Hello everyone, I am Zazubar, and welcome to the peak of my fucking weekend. So on Thursday night, I posted my immediate gut reactions to the brand new film directed by Guillermo Del Toro, Pacific Rim. I posted a non-spoiler review, but it was a lot more of just overall first impressions than it was a review, since I didn't really do much reviewing. It was mainly like, oh my god, that was essentially what that review was, and I'm very proud of it. And it was also mainly just kind of a teaser trailer for this video, which of course, now that I've let my friends actually have their own time to sit down and take it all in, to take in Guillermo Del Toro's new movie, Pacific Rim, now we're going to give our geeky analysis of the film. But before we start doing that, let me introduce my co-hosts. So, on my digital right, I have Gorizard.
How you doing?
And on my digital left, I have SUPERDM64.
Hi.
Yes, they are very enthusiastic to be here. And I thought that I had to give this movie its fair due. I had to bring two of my top Kaiju colleagues in on just tearing this movie apart in a good way and seeing what's inside, tearing apart every frame and analyzing it and just drooling over it, and geekgasming over it. We're just gonna give this movie more than its fair due. We're gonna overanalyze it to fuck. It's gonna be a good time. But in summation, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, welcome to Zazubar Film Productions Pacific Rim Spoiler Analysis. So, what's this thing all about? Well, I basically just told you. We're going to tear Pacific Rim apart, see what's inside, and again, that's a good thing. See what's inside, and just have a complete nerdgasm over it. But, before we do that, I just want to do a little bit of and let me just say this. Two people were supposed to be here who couldn't make it for different reasons. Originally, of course, I wanted Adam to be here, but he had no control over the situation of his fucking area didn't have it in theaters. He has a weird theater system, and it's just not in theaters up there yet, so he was unable to be here since he hasn't seen the movie yet, and that'd be awkward. And Nicola was supposed to be here as well, and I don't know what happened to her, so she's MIA, so who knows. So for tonight, it's just going to be me, Super DM, and Gorizard. But, let's just start off here. So Pacific Rim had a long build-up to it, and I think you guys will agree. I think we started hearing things about this movie about 2 years ago. I believe it was 2011, or 2010 even.
2010, it was 2010.
Yeah, and we knew it was going to be directed by Guillermo Del Toro, and we heard some interesting things regarding its connection to Legendary Pictures' Godzilla, and at least that's how I first heard about it, was its connection to Godzilla, where it was like, there was this brief period, supposedly, where Legendary was considering merging the films, and of course, that never even came close to happening. Though I'll say this, after seeing the movie, I actually wouldn't have minded. But, I'm glad that Godzilla's getting his own solo fair due. But we had a long build-up for this movie. We had a lot of information about it beforehand, or at least a lot of visual information about it. We knew the premise, and we saw the visual direction Guillermo del Toro was going for. We knew his inspiration. So the couple minutes before you guys walked into the theater and were about to sit down and watch the movie, what was running through your head? What were you expecting to sit down and watch? And either one of you can start.
Well, I was expecting to see a prologue because that's what I was anticipating, and of course we got that.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, just overall, what did you think the movie was going to be?
Honestly, like a live-action version of Evangelion meets Godzilla, but it's a completely original piece of work that pays homage to those genres. So I was expecting like the ultimate kaiju mecha film that I've been waiting for since I was a kid, and I think we got that.
Totally. Super DM, what were you expecting?
I was pretty much expecting what I got, but at the same time, the way I imagined it didn't even hold a candle to it. So,
yeah, and here's why I wanted to start there, because this movie completely deviated my expectations in the first 7 minutes of the movie. And here's why. Basically, every single trailer for this movie all that footage is in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, like some of
And of course,
the fight stuff in the city is also is later on in the film, but just about everything else is right there at the beginning.
yeah, because what I expected, and this is definitely what the film is, but what I expected was just we're going to explore the idea of the United Nations setting up this defense system of we build giant robots to fight giant monsters. And I thought that was going to be all the film was, and we were going to have a bunch of cool action scenes and exploring that idea. And that's totally what it is. I did not see the direction they were going to take. They were going to take it coming from a mile away. Because what the film does, and again, this is a full spoiler thing. So if you haven't seen the movie, what the fuck is wrong with you? I think everyone here is going to say the same thing, that we recommend you go fucking watch it. I don't know. Would you guys say that to our
please
non-spoiler listeners?
Support this movie.
This movie can't lose to grown-ups too.
No.
Oh, that's my big worry, because that movie. Oh God, please, movie watchers, don't let me down again.
Don't let this do what Lone Ranger did, because at least that movie deserved it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this movie is just an absolute masterpiece, I think. And some of the reviews it's been getting, I think, are just absolutely true. It is the perfect summer movie. If you're looking for entertainment, nothing better out there than fucking Pacific Rim. So that's about as non-spoiler as we're gonna get. Because now I'm gonna jump into the first big thing. First 10 minutes of this movie is almost like the last legs of the Jaeger program, which I did not see coming at all. And here's what I mean by that. So we open kind of in a way of totally establishing the universe. We open with opening narration by the main character named Riley. Riley Becker. Is Beckett?
Raleigh.
Beckett?
Raleigh Beckett, not Riley.
Oh, it's not Riley?
No, it's Raleigh. All of the characters in this movie have weird names because of the screenwriter, Travis Beacham. I have no idea why, but I read two of his scripts, the Clash of the Titans remake and Killing on Carnival Row, which, coincidentally, Guillermo Del Toro was also supposed to direct, but the project never went through. All of the characters in those two scripts have the weirdest names ever. And Raleigh's brother's called Yancey, which it's a name I never heard in real life. Ron Perlman's character's name is Hannibal Chow, which I could buy.
Well, we also know that that's not his real name.
Yeah,
he picked that.
He chose that name because he's Ron fucking Perlman.
Also because apparently he's a Time Lord.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, let's not try and bring Doctor Who into this, because otherwise this video will be an extra hour longer.
God, that would be a great crossover, but go on.
Oh, don't even tease me, Dylan. Don't even tease me. Yeah, this movie really... But Raleigh Beckett, I think is his name. We open with him and we open with his narration basically explaining what the universe is, and he immediately makes this a fascinating fucking universe. Just the first 2 minutes of this movie are like, this movie is going to be awesome. This is one of the coolest and most interesting sci-fi worlds I have seen in a very long time. Because here's what Guillermo Del Toro and the screenwriters do that makes it that way. They say, alright, so we got this portal, right, that lets interdimensional monsters come through. How does the world as we know it get affected by that? And then the first couple minutes of the movie are saying, oh, through our creative interpretation, this is what would happen. Cities would be destroyed. Kaiju flew. I thought that was such a cool idea. It added this extra layer to it. The monster didn't just stop after destroying one big city. It just kept fucking going, and it took 6 days to take it down. And almost the entire military was used up trying to take it down. I just thought that this universe was immediately interesting. How about you guys?
I went last time. Super, you go.
Yeah, I mean, I can honestly see this happening in that scenario, you know, like maybe not the out there sci-fi tech that they have with like the neural bridge or whatever, but yeah, I mean, it all seems very realistic. Like if kaiju really did start coming out of the ocean, I can picture this happening, you know, and that's just the way they set it up is very well done.
Yeah, totally. Gorizard, were you immediately engaged in the world, or did the movie take a few minutes to get you to it?
It already had my attention because me and Super DM, we already read the first draft of the script, and after reading that, I was already a fan of Pacific Rim anyway. But based around the small snippets of the narration from the film that we seen in the trailer, I was already engaged into it. I had an idea of the first kaiju attack, Trespasser, which is one of my favorite kaijus, by the way. But it didn't need a lot of time to get my attention. Already on the first shot from the movie, after the legendary Warner Brothers logo, when they have that definition of Kaiju and Jaeger in their native languages,
Yep.
it already got my attention. I already knew this is a Kaiju and Mecha movie. I already knew.
Yeah, I mean, from the first,
wasn't that so cool?
From the first,
I loved it.
Everything was just amazing.
Yeah. Oh my God. Just I agree. The minute that definition came up, I was like, I'm going to like this movie a lot.
Because that's how the script started. There was just like a list of terms that you had to know before you could read the script, and that was only 2 of them.
half of the terms in the first draft in the script that we read didn't even make it to the final cut.
How different is it? Because I mean, since we've already spoiled some of it. How different is the first draft from the film that we just saw?
It's slightly different, but the best way I can describe it is that the first draft is an absolutely character-driven film that mainly centers around Raleigh and Mako. And the final film is really more of a scenario-driven film, although it does have some character-driven aspects to it. But the first draft is really, really character-driven. And I hate to say this, it actually has more action than the final film.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. The final film, and this is just me saying this having not read the first draft, the final film is a lot more of an ensemble piece than something like... what's a good example? I don't know. Something like what you're describing, where it follows one person's viewpoint into this world. We get very much so kind of a sweeping view of this world from many different perspectives. Because the film, I don't think it would be correct to say that the film is from Raleigh's perspective, because there are a ton of scenes that he's not in.
Yeah, I mean, you get a lot from him, you get a lot from Idris Elba, you get a lot from the 2 scientists, dude from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and dude from
Charlie Day,
and dude from
Charlie Day,
and the other dude from Torchwood and Dark Knight Rises. But
the dude from fucking Torchwood was in this movie, and he wasn't a horn dog, which was weird. All the characters in Torchwood are horn dogs.
Indeed.
But again, not a Doctor Who video. But yeah, it's really interesting because the movie does something really important for this kind of movie. If you're gonna have a movie with this enormous godlike scope, because one of the things that made this movie just as awesome and a masterpiece as it was just the scope was something I haven't seen in a movie in a very long time. And you're going to hear that phrase a lot in this movie, in this review. I haven't seen this in a very long time. And the scope was one of those things. I mean, the scope of this movie was just insanely big. I mean, and I guess that's kind of, you expect that with giant robots versus giant monsters, but it goes beyond just that simple premise. It goes beyond that, because it's just, you get so much information about this crazy sci-fi world in so little time, and mainly done through visuals. A lot of the information about this world is done through visuals, kind of similar to how Man of Steel does it, though there's a lot more dialogue in this than Man of Steel.
And something that adds not just to scale but also to realism is like the way the robots fight. Their choreography. It's not like Transformers where these big hulking metal robots are jumping around like ninjas. These things, like, they'll lift their fist and it takes like a few seconds to get up, and it makes them feel big.
Oh yeah, that was something that really impressed me, and that's something that was sold to me in the trailer, which was really cool, and they totally kept this going. These robots are fucking enormous, and they make it very clear that when they move, shit goes down. And they show that in the opening scenes.
And when they hit something, you feel like there's weight behind it. The CG's really good in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we don't even have to outright say. The action in this film is astounding. It is just it's insanely well done. It is some of the best action I've seen. Again, some of the best action I've seen in a long time, just because of how, again, the scale of it and how dynamic Guillermo Del Toro was able to make it. Even though you've got robots fighting, even though you've got these fairly bulky robots fighting bulky giant monsters, just the things they're able to do and the things that the script is able to have them do just is fascinating to watch. It's really, really cool and really, really fun to see. Oh my god, can the robot do this? Yes, it can! I don't know about you guys. When they showed the things have jetpacks, I kind of cheered a little bit because I was like, yes!
Oh my god, some of my favorite moments in this movie. A giant robot, wails on a giant monster using a chip as a baseball bat, basically.
Oh yeah, I'm 98% sure that was a reference to War of the Gargantuas, and I was like, yes! Because, it's like that scene where Sanda and Gyra are just beating the fuck out of each other with all that stuff that's in the harbor, and one of the things that they have is a giant, tanker boat, and that's what the robot has.
Yeah.
And he throws it just like Gyra did. I'm like, yes, I hope that's a reference, and I think it is.
Another moment that I really loved is the very first scene where you see the one robot reveal that it has those chest cannons.
Oh my god. And again, another example of scale. When those things hit that monster, you feel the recoil of that explosion.
Oh, yeah.
Just that's something that was so insanely well done. And I'll say this, that's really hard to pull off with CG because it's fake. It has no weight to it. And they did that. They were able to demonstrate that these things do have weight in the world of the film so insanely well. And they did the same thing with the giant monsters. The monsters had this great weight to them that I've definitely never seen that in an entirely CG monster movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like even Cloverfield, I mean the monster's barely in Cloverfield, so we don't quite get that. But when they're on screen this often and doing the kind of stuff they're doing in Pacific Rim, it was just so impressive to me that they had the scale that they did. And it's weird. The parts that really exemplified that to me were the parts where they were in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Which is weird because you would think that's where they'd be their most weightless, but they weren't. When they crash into the water, the waves that got kicked up were just so fucking awesome.
Yeah, I think that's why when they're in the water, they seem even more massive, is because you see the waves and you don't really get to see the whole robot. You just see the top half, so that makes it seem even bigger for some reason.
Well, yeah, because you're getting the sense if it's this high up on them, imagine what it's going to be on me.
And I mean, I just want to applaud the designs for these things. They did a really good job making each one unique. The oldest one that the Russian people drive, and it's got that piston system in its arm when it punches the thing. And the only one I wish we had seen more of is the red one with the 3 arms, because I thought that was a really interesting premise.
And then it gets its ass kicked in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I was a bit disappointed with, because Crimson Typhoon, China's Jaeger, is one of my favorite Jaegers, and I was kind of disappointed that he didn't put up that much of a fight. And you got 3 pilots piloting that 250 foot tall robot.
Yeah, and it's got 3 arms and shit, and it's got blades on the arms. It was so fucking cool.
Well, when they're in the Shatter Dome and they first introduce it, they make a big deal out of it. Whoa, that's a really badass Jaeger. But then it gets taken down in like you said, in 2 seconds.
And in a case like that, there was probably some stuff that got cut out for time.
Yeah.
Because the movie is quite long, and I wish it was longer, honestly.
136 minutes, I think.
Yeah, it's over 2 hours. And I would not have minded a 3-hour version of Pacific Rim. I mean, I'm sure that people who aren't kaiju fans would be like, no, it was too long as it is. But I'm like, fuck you, I want more of this universe. I want this movie to be 6 hours long. But of course that's not possible. But yeah, I mean the visual effects were just fucking astounding. I have not dropped my jaw in a movie theater in so long. It's been years, and I dropped my jaw at least 15 times in this movie. And part of it is the scale, and part of it is just that childhood and subconscious thing of Billy, that's a giant monster on an American movie screen.
Oh, yeah. And oh my god, the scene where they're in Hong Kong and the one monster just all of a sudden sprouts wings. that was
fucking Rodan. Anybody? I mean, right? I mean,
that was the moment that my jaw dropped.
because you don't expect it. Because it goes up, and then wings fucking pop out of it, and it kicks the thing up into space, and then, oh god, the action in this movie was so dynamic and so powerful, and had such a scale to it. But yeah, you know what? Now that we're on that, let's talk first about the designs for the monsters, since you see them first. Did you guys think that they were very creative, or did you think that they were kind of generic? What did you guys think of the designs for the monsters? Because there are a lot of them.
I believe. Oh, you go ahead.
I liked them. I thought, they're supposed to be amphibious, and you really get that feel from them. They all look like, fish, basically. Like, there's the one line where somebody says, one will look like a shark and one will look like this, and they all look like variations on the same theme, which makes sense because they're all, they all have the same DNA code.
Right.
They're just mutations of the same code, basically. And so
all clones.
And so I thought, and with it being, with it turning out to be an invasion plot, I thought that made perfect sense for the world. And I thought, I mean, I didn't think they were generic. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that.
Yeah. Gorizard?
I thought they had very original designs. They didn't, how do we say, get designs lifted from previous kaijus like Godzilla, Gamera, or Young Gary. They stuck to their own original ideas, and that's what Del Toro wanted to do. He didn't want to make direct references to previously established characters or franchises in that genre, but he just wanted to provide that love letter, and he did that with the kaijus. These are some of the most original kaijus I've seen in a kaiju film in a while. And I love the fact how SUPERDM puts it. They all look aquatic because they all come out of the sea, and they're part of the same genetic code.
Exactly, and that's what makes it work, in my opinion, because they can have these crazy designs, and it makes perfect sense because they're not naturally occurring in nature. They're not for an evolutionary reason. They're there for a battle reason. They're being built by what are essentially aliens for a specific purpose.
Yeah,
knife head.
They're being mutated just to upgrade the weaponry. The same way that the humans keep building bigger and better Jagers.
Which is such a cool idea. I love that whole arms race that goes on between them. Such a fascinating idea. And I love the first monster because I gotta think that there's at least some references going on in some of them, because I mean a lot of them look very original. I totally agree with that. But the first monster being Knifehead, I'm like, how can that not be a reference to Guiron? Because it has that exact same head, and it's not like it's ripping it off. If that was an homage, I applaud it, because that's an obscure ass monster,
yeah.
And B, it was just so cool because I'm like, oh my god, it's a fucking Gamera monster. And again, it's not a bad thing. I applauded it for that. It's great homage. But if it's not, I mean, they still work. They don't only work because it's homage, and that was something that was really, really important to me.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It also reminded me a little bit of Barugon.
A little bit of Barugon in there too. And the lobster monster that we see in Tokyo during the flashback, or not even a flashback, during the drift between Raleigh and Mako, and Pentecost is in, or the Marshal, I forget his first name. We find out that the Marshal was a Jaeger pilot who saved Mako from a kaiju back in whenever it was, and that he saved her and he raised her. That monster had a lot of Ebera going on in it, and again, that was awesome because it's an obscure monster.
Yeah, especially the scenes where you just see its claw come up into frame.
I'm like, oh my god, it's Ebera!
If it was red, it would look just like Ebera.
Yeah, and again, we're saying references, and again, if they're not references, it still works, but I just think I applaud it more if it is.
Well, I mean, with this being a kaiju movie, it's hard not to, pick out those sort of design similarities. When the final monster pops up and it's got all those tails, it makes me think of Ghidorah.
A little bit of Monster X in there, too, especially Death Ghidorah in that particular instance.
Mm-hmm.
I think that my favorite design, though, in terms of the actual kaiju, is probably the first it's the first time the two Category 4 kaiju start heading towards Hong Kong. The first one that pops up, the one that's fat and that they eat it. Well, they don't eat it. What the fuck?
No, the one that looks like a gorilla.
Yeah, a little bit, but it has a vaguely Godzilla-looking head.
Leatherback.
Yeah, that's it. Come on, how is that not a Gamera reference? I love that design. I thought that was so cool looking because it wasn't. While it was definitely aquatic, it didn't look like a fish, which I thought was cool. It stuck out the most to me out of all the kaiju. And I really, really liked it.
Yeah, the biological weapons that these kaiju have are really neat too, especially on those two kaiju, because Leatherback has that EMP thing, and then the other one is, of course, the one that spouts wings, and I think he's also the one that shoots the acid out of his mouth, and he's got like that.
Yes, he is.
He's got that tail thing.
Now, let me ask you guys this. When they start using energy attacks, how much did you jizz? Because I did it a lot.
About a quarter cup.
Gorizard's like a gallon. I gotta one-up them.
I wanted to yell in the theater, but I noticed nobody was doing that, so I didn't want to be that guy.
I was so that guy. The amount of times I was vocal about awesomeness, people must have been around me just like, get this fucking geek out of here. I wouldn't shut up the whole movie because of how fucking awesome it was. I was like, fuck, that's a reference to this! None of you dumb fucks get that reference except me! And that was one of them where they start using energy attacks. They weren't just using their fists, they were like fucking shooting acid and using EMPs. And I was like, that's so cool. I also, the weapons on the Jaegers were also really cool, too. Like, you had the pulse cannon, and, they all had different weapons, which was really cool.
Yeah, I love the sword on Gypsy Danger.
Yes, that was awesome. I love how it came out like a whip.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, because it's easier to store that way.
I don't know. Did you guys get this impression? I had the feeling that maybe Mako added that whenever she restored it, because he obviously didn't know it was there, because he was like, we're all out of weapons, and she was like, no, we still have one.
Yeah, clearly. Very clearly. I think that's true. Because it's weird, because that was one point where I turned to Nickel and I was like, wait, this is his Jaeger, how did he not know that was there? And we agreed that was weird, but I guess that makes a lot of sense. That was just a badass scene too, where they like sliced that fucking monster and like almost in half. That was just badass. Now let me say this. We're raving about the kaiju designs and about the Jaeger designs. The fucking overall world in this movie was just absolutely gorgeous. I just got lost in how amazing it was. Every single inch of this world was fascinating to look at, especially the military base and the Bone District in Hong Kong, where it's the giant kaiju skeleton turned into like a house. That was awesome.
Yeah, everything in Hong Kong is really, really pretty.
It's beautiful. Yeah. But I love all the retro looks that are going on with like the clothes that they wear, like they wear those 50s bomber jackets with like the frills on them. And then you've got like, the Jaegers have a little bit of this. I mean, they look futuristic as fuck, but there's little bits of like retro looking kind of metal in them. And the whole concept of spray painting names and kind of patriotic designs on robots, that's straight out of World War II. Of course, the plane that bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki had a woman painted on it. So it was really, really cool, and I love that look. I love the look of the scientist labs, the Charlie Day character and the guy from Torchwood's lab.
Yeah.
Just retro in all the right ways. Just fucking that giant chalkboard filled with formulas, and then you've got tanks full of kaiju guts. That was just so cool. And Charlie Day's rocking a fucking leather jacket, which was awesome. A leather jacket and a tie are perfect combination to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, the world was just absolutely just gorgeous.
Yeah, because another thing that this movie did really well, at least this was true with the audience I saw it with, I think this movie can really bridge gaps, because I don't know, I doubt that everybody in the theater was kaiju fans, but everybody was engaged.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, totally.
Like, I mean, in the climax, you had people sitting on the edge of their seats. There was this old guy that sat like 2 or 3 seats down from me, and you know the part where what's his name? Is it Beckett?
Yeah.
When Beckett just starts wailing on that Australian guy, the dude a couple seats down from me just like jumps up and he's like, yeah.
Yeah. Now let's talk about that. Let's get into the characters. They're all extremely likable, except for that dude. Except for the Australian guy. I don't know. I thought that rivalry was unnecessary. It felt so cliched to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was a point to it. I mean, because the only thing that it seems to try to do is emphasize that Beckett hasn't been behind the wheel of a Jaeger in 5 years. And he's fully aware of that and brings that up on his own. We don't need this douchebag fucking jock just constantly bringing that up and being in his face about it. And we especially don't need it to culminate in a fist fight.
Yeah, and I mean, his reasons for disliking Beckett are really cliched too. You know, he gives him this.
They're so cliched.
He gives him this speech that's right out of like a cop movie where it's like, "You're a loose cannon, and I don't agree with your methods." Like,
exactly. Well, not even a cop movie, just like almost like a high school movie.
Yeah.
I'm like, how old are these fucking people? I mean, it didn't really hold the movie back at all for me because there's not a lot of screen time devoted to it. I think there's only like 2 or 3 scenes. But I too was like, when he started beating the shit out of him, I was like, fuck this kid. Because if anything, they definitely proved that Beckett is a badass.
Oh yeah.
Because he just kicks human ass and kaiju ass and just all kinds of ass. And Mako's ass.
He drags that Jaeger back to shore after his brother's been killed, and apparently, you know, you're not supposed to be able to drive the things by yourself, but he did it. You know.
Yeah, apparently only him and Pentecost are the only 2 that have ever been able to do it, and you know, I think that's part of the reason why they're so close and why they almost have this surrogate father-son relationship. And let's talk about him. Oh my god, dudes, Idris Elba in this fucking movie.
Oh yeah.
He was so cool. Just his character, because when I saw the trailers, I kind of looked at him like, oh, he's going to be our generic badass. He was far from a generic badass. He was a badass, but he wasn't generic. His character was not only really interesting, but just so fucking cool because they gave him layers and they gave him motivation and they made him likable for it. He wasn't just the cliched, stern military commander. They gave a reason why he was so stern. He really was a cool character to me. He's probably my favorite character in the whole film.
No, I gotta give that to Ron Perlman.
Yeah, but he has such a small role. It's like...
I know, but when he's on screen, he just steals it. He's like that guy in Versus.
Yeah. But I don't know. I just thought he was a really good character, just overall. And Idris Elba's performance was great. I mean, I know he can play a military guy. I watch him in Luther, and there's a lot of military going on in his performance in Luther. But just overall, his character was probably my favorite. I love the mystery surrounding his character. Because I turned to Nicola about a fourth of the way through the movie, and I said, is he her father? Because there was this very parental protective thing going on between him and Mako. And of course they explain why that is later in the film. But I thought, is like he her father and something happened with the mother that he's ashamed of? And I mean, I kind of knew that Mako's family was killed by Kaiju, but I didn't know the full extent of it.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's a lot more than them just getting killed. This thing fucking chases her. And specifically goes after her. And the Jaegers are like her guardian angels, because the one that Pentecost is piloting just fucking owns that Kaiju. And I really liked that was the thing that set her onto the path of becoming a Jaeger pilot.
Yeah, I thought the whole relationship between her and him was really well developed.
Yeah, because it was subtle.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't shove it down your throat that they were kind of they had a father-daughter thing going on. They let it come out naturally, and they never just outright say it. It's all done through natural character discovery. And here's the other thing. this movie never ceases to be interesting. And that was something that was really important to me, because if you watch the trailers and you don't know kaiju movies and you just watch it like, oh, it's just going to be an action fest. And there's a good stretch in this movie with no action in it. Like, at least a good 25 minutes with almost no kaiju in. I mean, you see them, they're talked about, of course, but they're not in the movie. It's all character stuff, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I don't think there's a single dull moment in this movie.
Not at all. It's always interesting. And that's just because the kaiju are never not the consequences, or not the cause of something. Everything that's explored in the film, everything we spend time with, has to do with the kaiju. Because all the stuff that has nothing to do with the kaiju, we get in the drift. And it's done. That's another thing that was done so insanely well. They make Beckett likable in almost 30 seconds. Or we at least know a lot about him in at least 30 seconds, because we get those flashes of their childhood, which was fantastic. And we get the bond between him and his brother just stated. Like, I like that the movie kind of forces you to accept that him and his brother have a strong bond, because they say that you have to in order to pilot the Jaegers. I just thought that was really fantastic, and such a professional and just well done way to make you like these characters and make them like each other really quickly.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Bill. Going back to Idris Elba's character, did you think we needed the whole subplot with him being sick or whatever?
Yes. Well, we didn't need it, but I thought that it was a really effective. It was just one of those little mysteries that keeps you engaged throughout the whole film. I mean, you can kind of guess it from the opening frames, because they show you that the Jaegers do fuck with your head and that they do affect you negatively, but we don't know why. And I think that what it does is it makes his character all the more tragic, because the minute you see him in that armor, you know he's going to die no matter what.
Yeah. And
I thought that was really cool, because it was like, no matter what, this character you really like is not going to get out of the situation alive no matter what he does. And I thought it was a solid place to end his character, because the one thing that he had to live for was Mako. Because you can see, I mean, of course, the whole Jaeger program would fall apart without his leadership, but as long as people like Beckett are still alive, the Jaegers are never just going to straight up die. You know what I mean?
Mm.
As long as these pilots are still there with his inspiration, they're still going to pilot it. Mako's safety and his protection of her was really the only thing he had to live for. And once that's done, once she's able to take care of herself, hold her own behind the wheels of a Jaeger, all bets are off. This motherfucker can do anything. So when he puts on that armor, he's like, this is my last battle, but fuck, I'm going to make it count. And the dude blows up his Jaeger to take out 2 humongous kaiju. So, badass points right there. He was just an awesome character.
And he took the only unlikable character in the movie with him.
Yeah. I thought that kid was so unnecessary. I find it interesting that a father and son with parental issues are piloting a Jaeger together, but I didn't think it was interesting enough to make him the unlikable dick that he is.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting choice to have him be the one that died and have the dad be the one that lives, because normally in that situation in a movie you would expect it to go the other way, you know.
Yeah. Oh, this movie threw me off its path a lot, which was really, really cool. There were so many not plot twists, but just directions I didn't see coming. Because, again, once the movie took the direction of the Jaeger program is on its last legs, I had no idea where it was going to go. And that's one of the things that made it so interesting to me.
Okay, so you were expecting this movie to be more opening with them kind of inventing the Jaegers. Is that what you were?
Not so much that. I thought that what we were going to get was a lot more. It was a little bit of a smaller story. And again, this is not a problem. This is a plus. That it wasn't this, because I thought what we were going to get was a lot more slowly paced, I guess is what I'm looking for. There were like it wasn't like we weren't trying to encapsulate this entire conflict in a 2-hour movie. And Guillermo Del Toro was ballsy enough to go for that and pro enough to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Which was really impressive to me. But I want to ask you this before we lose the point. How did you feel about the whole Idris Elba thing? Did you think it was unnecessary, or did you kind of feel a similar way about it as I did?
I didn't think it was unnecessary. I just, thinking back on it, I wasn't really sure. Like, I thought, they probably could have cut that subplot out for time if they really needed to. But I didn't think it was unnecessary, and it certainly added a good layer to the character.
Totally, I absolutely agree. I love the point where they're like, back in the early days, we weren't thinking about radiation shielding. I fucking love that line for some reason.
Yeah, and they kind of get into, they don't really stress it because it's not the focus of the movie, but they kind of have little nods here and there to like the environmental effects of the kaiju being in our world.
Oh, totally. The kaiju flu. The fact that their body parts are sold on the black market, and that's the whole point of Hannibal Chow. Yeah, I really like that subplot. Gorizard, what did you think of the overall roster of characters?
Well, first of all, the character Chuck Hansen, which is the son, right?
Yeah.
I agree. He was somewhat unnecessary, and he wasn't even in the first draft. And I'm gonna keep going to the first draft for some reason because I really love that script.
Fine.
But
yeah,
it was so unnecessary. I thought it was a generic character that didn't need to be in there, and I have a funny feeling that it was Guillermo del Toro who wrote that character into the script. And Idris Elba's character, it turned out better than I expected, and the whole mystery behind his condition is not that much of a mystery if you've read the prequel graphic novel, because the graphic novel explains everything that's well, not everything, but a good majority of things that are missing in the film. It explains the whole the trespasser incident. Tendo Choi, the Chinese American, and his involvement with the trespasser incident. Did you guys know that it wasn't actually the military and the rockets that took down Trespasser? It was a nuclear strike.
No.
It wasn't a bunch of rockets. It was a nuclear strike that killed them.
Oh, I did not. I thought, because the way they presented in the film, they say it took an entire armada of tanks and rockets to take him down 6 days later.
No, in the graphic novel, they make it clear that they had to use nuclear weapons to stop the kaijus, and they had to come up with a different way to stop the kaijus rather than the nuclear arsenal thing, because it started to become a problem. You had the whole toxic kaiju blood in the ocean and all that. So that's where they came up with the Jaeger idea.
Right, yeah, because if you just shoot them if you just keep shooting them, it's blood's gonna get everywhere, which is another reason to keep them out of the cities too. Which is why I liked how a lot of the battles took place in the water.
Right.
Yeah, it made sense from a strategy point of view, and I mean obviously we needed to have a battle in the city just because it's a giant monster movie. So, but
yeah. And it doesn't disappoint.
Oh no, they did that amazingly well. The destruction in this movie is on par with any action movie I've ever seen.
It was such just an orgasm for a Godzilla fan, just because it's such a throwback. It's just so cool. Just what it really did it for me? There's that beat that sounded eerily Ifukube when the first monster, not Leatherback, the other one, starts coming out of the water, and there's that da dun da dun da 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 da. I was like, that's so Ifukube. And then it comes up and just starts wrecking Hong Kong. I'm like, oh god, that's badass. There were just so many beats in this movie that were just so 60s Toho Kaiju movie for me. It was just insanely well done. And overall, the soundtrack is really, really good. I was actually kind of surprised. I didn't go into this movie expecting a good soundtrack of anything. It was a really kick-ass score. I love the main theme.
I was actually expecting a very good soundtrack because it's from Ramin Djawadi, who did the soundtrack for Clash of the Titans, Game of Thrones, Iron Man. I've been a follower of this composer for years, and when I heard, like, a year before this film came out that he was actually attached to compose the soundtrack for Pacific Rim, I knew, oh, this is going to be a badass soundtrack, because he has the track record to prove it.
Yeah, it was definitely badass. The only thing that kind of didn't fit for me was the ending rap song. That was weird. That didn't fit for me. Just because it's a very retro kind of movie, and that just kind of stuck out like a sore thumb to me. It's kind of weird. But what else do I want to touch on? Like aside from like in terms of specific like things that we can tear apart and analyze. Okay, so did you guys expect there to be a sequel to this movie? Like before you actually saw the ending, did you think that this was going to get turned into a franchise?
I strongly believe so, yeah, because I consider this kind of like the Star Wars of kaiju films. If anything, the Star Wars of this generation. This is what I believe. And
yeah, oh, totally, yeah, sure.
Despite that, in my opinion, the ending of this film is somewhat of a closed ending. You could end Pacific Rim where it is, and you don't need to make sequels, but it's an ending where there's a possibility of sequels. Because, of course, we already know by this point that the kaijus are controlled by some sort of interdimensional alien race. Let's say that in the sequel, they come up with some sort of advanced technology to reopen the portal to Earth.
Yes.
Right, or not. Yeah, you can take it in much directions.
I think this is a prime example of the best way to do a closed ending is that this movie's very self-contained, but at the same time, there's plenty of room for expansion on this universe. You know, they could do
totally.
They could do sequels with the aliens coming back. They could even do prequels and show different parts of the war if they wanted to. They could pretty much do anything with this universe. So I mean, I thought it was very good in that regard, in that it was a very self-contained story, but at the same time, there's plenty of room to expand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the best direction for now, at least, is stuff that takes place before the whole 5 years later thing. Like, this entire 5-year gap of story I would love to see filled with stuff. I mean, there's so many years you can fill with just stories upon stories of Pacific Rim stuff. In terms of a sequel, I don't think it's necessary. It's such a perfect kind of example of a really kick-ass, kind of entertaining movie, where it's not just a fun, dumb summer blockbuster. This movie is so smart. It's very smartly written. It's very smartly executed. It's a thinking man's summer blockbuster. I would say. And I think that it works very well in that regard. And the reason why, and I said this earlier, is because they take an idea and they run with it. And that's always something that really impresses me in a movie like this, where they take a really outlandish concept and then consider every facet of it. This is why Jaws is one of my favorite movies, and what's another example? The original Godzilla, of course. And there's a lot of Ishiro Honda style consequences of the monsters in this film, especially Gojira. There's a ton of just kind of the atmosphere of a true tried and true kaiju movie is in this movie, and that's the biggest thing that impressed me, because I've never seen an American film capture it so well. At the very least, I mean there you could say that something like Gorgo from England has kind of captured that spirit as well, but it wasn't so much trying to homage it as much as it was trying to rip it off. This is just such a good thing of homage that I can't help but be impressed. And the other thing that really impressed me with it, and Gorizard, you brought this up earlier, is it's not just homage. There's so much originality in this universe as well. And I think the prime example of that is how the Jaegers work. I mean, we've seen melds between man and machine before. Like, the mechs in District 9 kind of work in a similar way to Pacific Rim. But the difference is that they consider every single aspect of the drift, as they call it. And they also, I love it. It's just they say, oh, you can't just have one pilot because it's just impossible, because you need a pilot for each side of the human brain to take some of the weight off. I love that idea. And it adds a lot of originality to it.
I also like the idea that you can't just bridge with anybody. You have to find somebody that's compatible to you.
Exactly. You can't just bridge with anybody. And what I also liked was that it wasn't just that you had to have a personal bond. It was also that you had to have an understanding of the person. A romantic interest, for instance. And another thing that I thought was really subtly well done was the romance. I thought it was a little generic, especially in the end, but what I really liked about it was that it's a plot point. The fact that they have romantic chemistry is a plot point. And I like that.
Yeah, they don't just have it because it's a rule. They have it because it furthers the story.
The story does not work without them having romantic chemistry, which was fantastic. I mean, when was the last time you guys saw an action movie that facilitated the romantic plot? It was fantastic in that way. And what I also like is it's not nothing that doesn't have to be beaten over you in the head isn't. And again, it's such a pro kind of movie in that way, where they don't beat anything over your head that doesn't have to be beaten over your head. The example of this I'll get into, because it's actually one of my smallest gripes with the film, is the aliens. They have such a little consequence on the film, because it's all about what they're doing with the kaiju that's important. They themselves are not really important, so we don't dwell on them.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even really get a good look at them.
No, and even when we do, they look very generic. But whatever, they're on screen for 2 seconds. And here's why. I think the aliens' plan in this movie is straight out of Man of Steel. They want to terraform Earth, and I'm like, ugh. That's the one piece of dialogue where the movie kind of lost me, and that was it. Where they explain that the reasons why the aliens want Earth is because they want to terraform it. I'm like, oh god, that's been done 10 million times.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it.
I didn't get the impression.
God damn it, go.
I didn't get the impression that they were terraforming it. I got the impression that they were coming.
No, they say that they were. They outright say they're going to terraform the planet once they've gotten rid of the people.
See, the way I was understanding it is that they were coming to just like ravage all our resources, and then kind of like the aliens from Independence Day.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because even that last scene where Relay and Gypsy Danger go down into the Antiverse, which is the name of the universe where the kaijus come from, it kind of felt like that moment where Jeff Goldblum and Will Smith were entering that alien mothership in Independence Day and dropping the payload.
Yeah, it was exactly like that. And it kind of bugged me. I thought that was a little bit hackneyed, and I didn't think we had to go there. I think that it could have just been, we don't know why the aliens want Earth. They just do, so let's not worry about it. And because it's just, I'm like, we just had Man of Steel weeks ago, and it had the same, the aliens had the same motivation. But here's why it doesn't bother me. Because it's literally 2 lines of dialogue where it's important. What only matters is that they're sending kaiju in. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter what they want to do with the Earth, because once we're gone, it has no consequence. Because we have to be gone first for that to become what's the word? For that to become important. The whole terraforming thing they can only do once all of humanity is dead. So we don't even have to worry about it, which is something I really like. Anything in the movie that's not important to the plot and to what the movie is trying to achieve is not, again, it's not hit over your head, and that's one of the things. It's the fact that the aliens want to terraform the planet is not important, so we're just going to spend 2 seconds on it because we have to give some explanation for why the aliens want to conquer Earth, but it's not the point of the movie. I really like that, and that's why I only took 0.05 points off the fucking movie in my non-spoiler review. For that one point, that was the only time in the movie where I groaned, because I'm like, oh.
Yeah, see, I mean, I don't even
that plot again.
I don't even feel like we needed their motives in this movie. We could have got by without knowing why they wanted Earth, because I mean, what's important is their methods. I mean, they've developed the ultimate weapon. It can do even more damage than an atomic bomb, and you can fire it more than once. I mean.
Exactly, precisely. And you can send, and once they find out how to send more than one through, we're fucked. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter, and that's why I took so little off the movie because it's fucking inconsequential. If we didn't get their motivations, it would have been fine. I just think that Guillermo Del Toro wanted to throw, sci-fi buffs a bone, just like be like, all right, I'll give them their alien reason for why they want to conquer Earth. I think it was mainly done to close any potential plot holes. Which I don't think there are really any plot holes in the film at all. At least nothing major that kind of ruins the movie. Because what I just criticize is not a plot hole; it's just hackneyed. And again, it's so inconsequential that I can't, in good conscience, take more than what little I took off of the movie, which is .05. I can't do it because it's so inconsequential. Those were like the only two things that bugged me, was that motivation and the bully thing. Those were the only two things where the movie lost me. Everything else, I was sucking the movie's dick. Just every other scene, I was just like, I was on this movie's dick because it was just so fucking good, and it was just an amazing movie. But what else did I want to talk about?
Actually, in the first draft, the aliens are not even in it, and the motives for why the kaijus are coming on the Earth is completely different. And I actually prefer this motive better than the film version. And basically,
What was it?
Okay, like I said, there are no aliens in the first draft, and
right.
the kaijus, like I said, they come from this dimension called the Antiverse, and basically their homeworld is dying. It goes up to the point where their sun is collapsing very fast, and the kaijus are multiplying at a rapid rate, and they have to cross through different dimensions to find a new home. And although the script doesn't really make you sympathize with the kaiju, but after kind of like thinking about their motives, you kind of feel sympathetic for them. Oh, they just want to find a new home. They don't want to die. But there's a particular scene where one of the characters they have a drift with the kaiju brain, and they look into the Antiverse, and it is overpopulated, and that is the reason why in the first draft there are more kaijus coming out. Like, it doesn't go up to 2, it goes up to 4 at one point, and they're all Category 4 kaijus.
Yeah, that's all. See, I like that idea so much better, because the only reason I was okay with the fact that they're being controlled by aliens was because it reminded me so much of Invasion of the Astro Monster.
Yeah, and I felt like it was supposed to be an homage to
totally, absolutely,
all those great Godzilla aliens.
Yeah, totally. I mean, they were right out of the Exilians, or the Keelaks, or the people from the Space Hunter Nebula, or even the spacemen from the Third Planet from the Black Hole. God, fucking Godzilla aliens have long names.
Yeah, the thing probably didn't get a long ass name for these guys. Like,
yeah, I know.
The people,
they're just the masters.
The people from the collapsing sun in the Antiverse, like.
Yeah, they're just the masters. I really like that. I also like that we get a little bit of that sympathy for the kaiju, because what they go through to be made is painful as fuck, we see. Like, when Charlie Day's character drifts with the kaiju brain, he screams because of how painful it is for these things to be created. Because we get to see a fairly intricate scene of how it's done. They basically draft their flesh almost like a sewing machine, and it just looks excruciatingly painful. I thought that was really well done. And again, what the movie really succeeds in doing is it gives you a lot of information very quickly and in a very satisfactory way. We don't spend 10 minutes on the kaiju's home planet seeing them get born, and we see the pain. We see the pain in less than 30 seconds, which is really well done. Go ahead.
One thing I had, it's not really even a complaint or more like a nitpick, yeah. If these things are being, are we supposed to assume that they're being genetically engineered? Because in that case, why was the one pregnant? Or are they just being bred? Or
that was a little weird, I will admit.
Or was it just a way for them to sneak in an extra kaiju?
That was really weird, because clones they're infertile in real life, but again, this movie is not really trying to be realistic.
And I mean, we can assume, these are aliens. We can assume that their cloning methods are much better than ours, and maybe they could be fertile. But
yeah, but it is really weird, right? Because it's like, because I mean, they say pregnant. Maybe it's not even pregnant. Maybe it's almost like a hydra. Or imagine it like this. Maybe it's more like this, and this is not in the film. This is just me totally reaching here. Maybe what's going on is less of a pregnancy and more of what sharks do. Because in a shark's mouth, you have rows and rows of spare teeth behind the front row of jaws. So when they lose a tooth, because that's their payload, that's what they've got, they need it replaced immediately. So the new tooth pops into place immediately. I wonder if these kaiju, if that particular kind of kaiju, leatherback, or was it leatherback? No, it was the one that flew.
It was Otachi. It was Otachi, the Rodan kaiju.
Right, the Rodan one. I wonder if it's more like that, where when it dies, another one is born. Again, maybe I'm reaching, but that's almost, I get that sense from it. Like, it's a lot more of, it's a defense mechanism, so that way, once it goes down, it's almost immediate in how another kaiju is born.
Well, I mean, it could be that it's still technically a clone. Like, it could be, some animals in nature that use
asexual reproduction.
Yeah, basically natural cloning. They just, they bud and they make a tiny version of themselves, and then they send it on its merry way. So, I mean, that could be
like an amoeba.
Yeah.
That could be it, and that's very similar to the whole. It's almost like a shark's mouth theory. It doesn't really matter. It's just there for an extra scare. It is very strange though when you consider how the kaiju are made. And it's not so much a plot hole as it is just kind of like, what? How is that? What's the reason behind that?
Yeah, because I mean, with me, it just raised the question like, okay, are these aliens like growing these things in labs like I assume they are, or are they just like using selective breeding?
Well, no, because they're clearly growing them in labs, because we see that happen. What I think is going on there, and again, we're not. This is not in the movie. Again, this is us reaching. I think what's going on there is that they don't create these things from scratch.
It could be that there was already some biological basis for it in there.
Oh, there had to be. I think that there were a whole planet full of kaiju, and they were just taking them and then cloning them, because there's no way they created these things from scratch. They must have found the planet of them and then started cloning them, and then they say that they genetically engineered them to have better weapons on them, like knife head. Like again, it's an explanation for why these weird powers can be, because they can't occur in nature. So I think that with the pregnancy, because if that's the explanation, then a pregnancy makes a lot more sense to me, because they're not breeding it from scratch. Not every cell is not being engineered by them for a specific purpose. They're starting with a template and then adding on their own genetic modifications for their battle needs. So when you've got the template of the Rodan one, and maybe it's already born pregnant, like, and this is a terrible movie to compare it to, but another Ron Perlman film, Alien Resurrection, does the same thing. If you clone someone when they're pregnant, the clone is pregnant. Mm-hmm. Which doesn't make a lot of sense, but maybe that's the same thing they're going for here. I don't know. So maybe it's that way. Because it's not like we don't see repeat kaiju.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that it's less cloning and more splicing.
Yeah, but again, they outright say that they are cloning them. But I think that's more for like stocking weapons, as opposed to they're all the same thing. And maybe it's not even just external looks. It could just be genetic code.
Yeah. They activate.
Like they might all look different, but they're all the same creature. They're just different versions of it. Like, I mean, Biollante and Godzilla are the same creature. They just look different.
Yeah, because I mean, you can take the same genetic code and just activate different genes and create a totally different looking thing.
Exactly. Very, very true. Again, that's another fascinating part of this movie, is the science in it is really intriguing. Does it make a lot of sense? Not really, but it's cool.
Parts of it do. I like the fact that the kaiju have 2 brains.
Yeah, and that was straight out of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, which I liked. That was really cool. I like that as well. But I also just love the scenes where Charlie Day and Ron Perlman are having debates about kaiju physiology. I thought that was fascinating. I would have liked to see more of it. Because, although Hannibal Chow presents himself as a badass, like, arms dealer, he's still a geek at heart. I mean, he's still a biologist geek at heart. He's built this fortune and this badass image for himself of a motherfucker who does like cuts kaiju up and uses them as weapons, and sells them on the black market. He's essentially like the next thing above a drug dealer, but just with kaiju. And I love that scene where they're talking about, I need a fresh kaiju brain. And they're like, and he's like, that's not possible. I've tried to get the brain out. It's just the skull is impervious. And he's like, but they have two brains, so get the second one. I'm like, that's so fucking cool.
Yeah.
It was just a really well done idea. I really, really enjoyed that part of it.
Which, I mean, the explanation for why they have two brains is that they need it to move around because they're so big. So you could question why these things store thoughts in both brains when they could just use that one as a moving thing, but whatever.
Yeah, we don't know how much of it, because wouldn't it just be muscle memory then?
Yeah, I mean, you would assume that the main brain would handle all, like, the thoughts and things, and the secondary brain would just be for, like, muscle memory and stuff like that.
Right, it's like, oh, this is how you're supposed to walk.
Yeah.
And then the main brain is, oh, do you remember this one time a long time ago? I remembered. It's a really fascinating thing to look into. And again, it's one of those things where it has the tried and true nature of a kaiju science fiction film, and it's just so fascinating to think about its ideas and what it presents as science fiction.
Yeah, I mean, none of these things I'm bringing up in any way take away from the movie. It's just, speculation, and that's what I'm saying. This universe has a lot of potential for expansion. I mean,
yeah, and if anything, it's a positive towards the film because we're thinking so much about it, and we're not like, oh, because this wasn't brought up, it's a problem. We're thinking about it because it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, a movie that has you thinking about it this hard afterwards is a good movie.
Yeah, I got news for you. That's what it's kind of it's at least a memorable movie, and by all means, this is a memorable movie.
Oh God.
I can't wait to see it again. Which I do.
Classic.
Instant classic. Oh, totally. And again, that's another positive towards it's not just straight up homage. It's not Superman Returns. It's not just all scenes lifted from the previous films paying tribute to it. It's paying homage. It's a love letter to previous kaiju films, but it still takes its own ideas and runs with them.
I mean, and on every account, it's a very well-balanced film because, it strikes a very good balance between homage and originality, and the world that they build strikes a very good balance between believability and out-there concepts, and, the tone of the movie strikes a good balance between, seriousness, but also with, your comic moments in there. So, I mean, the whole movie is just very well-balanced.
Oh, it's insanely well-balanced. Again, such a pro-directed movie. Guillermo Del Toro was a fucking pro to a T. He can't do any wrong. Everything he does in this film works. The criticism I threw out earlier about that plot thing, it's so tiny and it's so inconsequential. It's just such a pro movie. I can't help but admire it. I love it so much. Trying to think what else we can cover and kind of sink our teeth into. I mean, we covered the effects. They're just fucking sexy, man. This movie is just a sexy-ass movie.
Yeah, also in terms of cinematography, this is one nice-looking movie.
Oh, it's gorgeous. I love all the wide shots. It's such a well-shot film because it really solves all the problems of modern action movies, because a lot of people complain that modern action movies, it's all close-ups. And there were very few close-ups in this film. It was shot like a 60s monster movie. It was shot almost like they were using suits, which I really liked.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like you're watching a boxing movie from the 80s, just with a giant monster and a giant robot,
Yeah, well, what was really cool about that was Guillermo Del Toro was not afraid to show these fucking things off, because the CG looks so good. He's like, fuck these guys. I'm fucking showing every facet of how these things move and how they look. I love how much we see of Leatherback when Gypsy Danger is fighting him in Hong Kong. And to be fair, most of the kaiju we see at night, but it doesn't matter. They still look fantastic, and the cinematography is enough for Guillermo Del Toro to say, fuck you, my kaiju look good.
Yeah, I mean, the only ones that I don't think we really got a good enough look at, for my taste, are the ones that they fight underwater. They're not the big one. You see plenty of him, but the other two, Yeah,
definitely. That was That was a little bit kind of mysterious. And that's just because it was dark under there. And they weren't the most original looking of the entire roster of kaiju. So I think Guillermo Del Toro was just like, I need something to build up to like the final boss, kind of. Gorizard, what was the name of the last monster?
The Category 5 kaiju?
Yeah.
Yes. A Scunner. It was called Scunner.
Scunner?
Yeah, Scunner.
Badass fucking beast, man. Holy shit. Just that thing looked amazing. Did you guys see how much bigger it was than the Jaegers?
Yeah, that's the first thing that went in my mind when the head popped out. I said to myself, that thing's bigger than the fucking Jaeger. How are they going to bring it down?
That's another reason that it reminded me of King Ghidorah. It's just so massive.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. And the multiple tails were in there too, and the head. It looked like a classic looking kaiju. And yeah, that's another thing that we haven't brought up yet that I want to touch on. What makes this movie so effective as an action movie is that every time something happens, you feel it emotionally. That scene where you see 3 Jaegers up against 2 Category 4 kaijus, and you just see them getting torn apart. Every time they lose a Jaeger, you feel it. You feel like, oh, fuck! We're screwed, guys! You feel it with these characters. When those Jaegers get taken apart, and every single Jaeger counts. It's really, really well done.
Not just on the emotional level either, just on a logical level, because the way they describe the final battle, when they're just planning it, it seems like it's going to be pretty impossible to pull off with 4, and then they wind up having to do it with 2,
Yeah, exactly. It was just really, really insanely well done. And again, it goes a long way to showing how masterfully Guillermo Del Toro was able to get you into these characters' heads without spending a ton of time developing them. He makes them all likable. He makes you connect with them because you feel this struggle they're having and how hard they're trying to stop it. It's insanely well done. Whenever they lose a Jaeger, even those characters are not insanely well developed. They are likable, and you're just like, guys, we're screwed. As a species, we're fucked. I thought that was insanely well done. And that's something that also really impressed me as a conception of a modern action film. Just how connected you got to the characters, and how connected you got to the situation. What else do I want to bring up?
Let me make a correction right quick. The Category 5 kaiju is not called Scunner. It's called Slattern. I just looked it up right now.
It's called Slatter?
Slattern.
Oh. Like a lantern, but with a S?
Yeah, Slattern.
That's a weird name. Yeah, totally. It's insanely well done. I'm kind of stretching for stuff now. Another thing I really liked visually, was that all of the technology looked really used and kind of worn down. The interiors of the Jaegers all have dents and some of the paint's missing, and it just looks worn down and used. You can tell that these things have been in combat with giant monsters for years. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, I mean, it all looks very authentic. I like the Russian ones, on the inside of their Jaeger, and they have those weird eyepieces instead of the newer Jaeger suits, and that's another thing that just really added to how unique each and every Jaeger is. These aren't just this isn't just an army of identical robots. Each one is very much personalized, and that's kind of a Japanese thing because when you look at cartoons from over there involving giant robots like Gundam or whatever, they always have them. Each one be personalized,
Yeah, totally, absolutely. But yeah, it was really, really well done. It looked it all just looked so fantastic and so authentic. The special effects in this movie were astounding. Another thing I really liked, whenever they could use a practical effect, they used a practical effect. One that really impressed me was when Raleigh gets out of the Jaeger in the opening of the movie when it just crashes on the coast of Antarctica, or Alaska, excuse me, and it just crashes down, and they must have had that whole head built because he gets out of it, and it's definitely a practical effect. I thought that was really impressive, and it looked amazing. Just, again, Guillermo Del Toro was a master behind the camera because every single scene that could use a practical effect used a practical effect. Another one that really impressed me that Nicola threw out, and again, since she's not here, I'll make her point for her. When they're fighting the Rodan one in Hong Kong, and they shoot the coolant on that tentacle on the back of its ass, on that tail with like the claw on it. That tail looked like it was actually a prop because when it fell apart, it didn't look CG at all. I think they built it and it looked great. Just the special effects in this movie were astounding.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see, the special features on the DVD or whatever, just to see more in depth of how they did all that, because there's a lot of really good shots in here.
Yeah, it's a sexy ass movie. But let me ask you guys this: did it bother you that, not bother you, but did it kind of strike you guys as weird that less of the movie didn't take place in Japan as it did? Like, there was very little of it that took place in Japan, which I thought was weird. Like, it was just the flashback with Mako that took place in Japan. That was it.
Well, I mean, I thought that was very much on purpose, just because, they wanted this to be a worldwide threat. They didn't want to be this to be the, stereotypical giant monsters in Japan sort of thing.
Right, but I thought that it would have been cool. I at least think that they should have done it where the main base was in Tokyo.
Or instead of using Hong Kong as their Asian destination for a fight, they could have done that in Tokyo.
Exactly. I think that's exactly my thought. I'm like, that would have just been so much cooler if that was Tokyo. It would have just been a great reference. I thought it would have made a lot of sense.
But I mean, at the same time, I understand why they wanted to use China, because there's a line where they're selling kaiju bone powder, and the Chinese used to do the exact same thing with dinosaur bones.
Yeah, I know, and I get it. It makes sense, and it's not a problem with the movie at all. I just think that it was kind of a missed opportunity to not have that part of it take place in Tokyo. That being said, the one scene that does take place in Tokyo, the scene where Mako's a kid, fucking badass scene.
Mm-hmm. That's actually where the first kaiju attack happened in the first draft. It wasn't in San Francisco. It was in Osaka.
Yeah, I think the second one takes place in Tokyo in the film. In the finished film, it says this. Then the second one was in Tokyo. Yeah. And
I like one thing I like about that scene is that we stay in the alley and we don't really see a lot of the fight between the Ebra-looking one and Idris Elba, because it really leaves a lot to the imagination.
Yeah, it's very much so from her perspective. So when she goes in that crater where the kaiju fell and the Jaeger is just standing there, and you see the sun glaring down, and you see Idris Elba get out, it's all from her. It's all her memory. It's not. We're not seeing an objective flashback, and that's something that I think is very well represented. We're seeing her personal memory.
Right.
So it's kind of dramatized.
Which makes so much sense.
Which is really cool. Yeah, it's really well done. Just that the light gleaming off of Idris Elba and the Jaeger, and he looks all heroic. It's like probably in reality he looked battered and bruised. I thought that was really well done. It's almost like he's her knight in shining armor.
What really bothers
me
about this film, now that I think about it, since you brought that subject up, is that Coyote Tango wasn't in here, Japan's Jaeger, and they marketed him along with the other Jaegers, and I don't understand why he wasn't in it.
I thought that it was really weird how little Japan had a consequence on the film, since that's like, I admit it, that was one of the biggest influences on this film was Japanese film culture, and so little of it was in it. It was so weird to me.
Well, I wonder if they didn't do that on purpose just because they've got Godzilla coming up, and we know that part of it's going to have to do with Japan,
Yeah, but that didn't stop them from all their references to Ishiro Honda movies.
Yeah.
I thought it was a very strange choice, and again, it doesn't hurt the movie really. It's just very, very strange. And it's a little bit of a missed opportunity, I feel. I mean, and that's definitely something to consider. What Dylan just brought up of maybe they were doing that on purpose so that way Godzilla could feel more unique. But even still, at least for the sake of Pacific Rim, I think it should have had a little bit more of a connection to its original source of Japan.
Actually, now that you bring it up, I noticed that they don't mention that Tokyo wasn't destroyed. And a while back, I saw an interview where Guillermo Del Toro was talking about not only Godzilla in general, but Legendary Pictures reboot. and he had a discussion with Thomas Tull. I have no idea if he was joking or being serious or not, but he said that Thomas Tull asked him to not touch this city in Pacific Rim. That's Godzilla's. And I'm beginning to suspect that that might be Tokyo, because Trespasser attacked San Francisco, and there are a bunch of reports saying that the reboot will take place in San Francisco, and there's been some filming in Hawaii and Vancouver.
You're talking about Godzilla. Yeah, it's definitely I think they've outright said that it's going to take place in San Francisco.
Right.
Which I think is genius, because that's the U.S. city that's closest to Japan. I think that's genius.
Right. And even one of the producers didn't even bother saying what city Godzilla is going to attack. He was quoted as, "I want fans to be surprised." I'm beginning to suspect that it is Tokyo. That's why it wasn't attacked or even referenced in Pacific Rim.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's it. I mean, but they do. I mean, they make a big point that Japan was the second place that got hit. But did they outright say Tokyo, or did they just kind of...
Osaka. I know for a fact they said Osaka.
Oh, it was Osaka. Yeah. Okay. Hey, that's Godzilla's second city. Whenever I hear cities Godzilla attacks, I'm like, Tokyo, then Osaka. But...
Yeah, so I wonder if...
I just thought it was a little strange. Yeah.
I wonder if they didn't just tone down the direct references to Japan because of Godzilla and just left in, all the Ashura Honda references, obviously, because those aren't, direct references to Japan. That's just things that the fans will pick up and nobody else will.
Right, yeah. And maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just being pissy because I'm a Godzilla fanboy and I didn't get my Godzilla, but, it was just a really, I thought it was a little bit of a missed opportunity. At least they should have put their Jaeger in there. I agree with Gorizard. It's like, at least put their Jaeger in there.
I mean, even if it's just a scene of him fighting something, like in the expository scenes where they're talking about all the background information, even if it was just that,
Right, because, I mean, it's an American Jaeger that takes down the monster in Tokyo when Mako first pops up. By the way, we didn't even touch on her character. How'd you guys feel about her character?
I felt that they kind of watered her down in this version, because in the first draft, again going back to the original script, she is like somewhat of this not traumatized, but this very, very revenge-driven person. Like there's this sense of darkness overwhelming her character, and you really feel that when the writer Travis Beacham describes her character. Here, you don't get that sense that she's kind of like, a bit traumatized by the whole kaiju attack she suffered, and that it kind of like revolves around her. Although it is referenced by Idris Elba's character that she's out for revenge and he doesn't want her to pilot the Jaeger. And also in the original draft, she was already an established Jaeger pilot. She wasn't in training. She was already a Jaeger pilot. And the reason why in the first draft she's with Raleigh, she's partnered up with him, is because she also lost one of her pilots, one that she was very close with. And coincidentally, Raleigh also lost his brother, so now they needed to put two and two together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm gonna agree with you to an extent, because I mean, that element of her character is definitely still in there, but it is watered down. But I think the scene that saves it for me is the first time she's actually in the Jaeger, whenever they're doing the test of the neural bridge or whatever, and she starts freaking out and she almost blows up the whole base. I think that scene kind of saved it for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Super DM here. I'm the only one here who hasn't read that first draft, and I thought that the problem of her being a Jaeger pilot was definitely, at least to me, it was explored enough, and it was made enough of a big part of her character where it was a legitimate conflict in the film of getting her behind the wheel, because she's going to be great at kicking these things' asses, but the first thing that you've got to do is be totally calm and collective when you're going after these fucking kaiju, because you can't. Because the problem with that neural bridge is that she dwells on one memory, and that's the whole problem. Is you have to be kind of psychologically complete in order to be behind the wheels of one of these Jaegers. Which, by the way, I liked that our main character was really well-rounded in that sense, because he's really this master Jaeger pilot. And what I liked about that was he doesn't spend the whole movie whining about his brother's death. And I thought that was a really good decision.
Mm-hmm.
Because if this were a lesser director and a lesser screenwriter, that character would not be shutting up about his brother and about how tragic he is.
And that's why it's a good thing that there's a pause in between events, because his characters had 5 years to sort of deal with that. So by the time the events of the story proper start taking place, he's not over it, obviously, but he's come to grips with it more.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a big part of his character. It's still why he's so passionate about this fight. But he's not doing it for revenge. He kind of understands this is a job, and that was the risk, and that's what happened. And now I'm just going to finish the job, and that's the best thing I can do to honor his memory. I really enjoyed that. I thought that was very fresh and a big relief in this very revenge-filled action genre culture we live in nowadays. Everyone's got to be out for revenge for some reason, and everyone's got to have darkness to them. And I thought it was very refreshing in a very, balanced mix of a dark and a entertaining sci-fi film that we got a really well-rounded, wholesome character who was also interesting because, again, he could have spent this whole movie whining about his brother, and it would have been totally easy for them to do that, and he doesn't. It's just there, and it's part of him, and they move on. And it's a good mirror for Mako and Relay to have that, where they both had a similar thing happen where they both lost someone to the kaiju, and the difference is in how they deal with it. Relay wants to go after them to honor his brother's memory because he thinks that's all he can do. I'm going to kill these things because I want to finish the job so my brother didn't die in vain. Mako's a lot more like, you dirty cocksuckers killed my parents! And she has no foresight aside from that. Once she takes down a kaiju, I think that she thinks in her mind that that's going to bring her peace, and that's clearly not what happens. And being with Relay, allows her to realize that there's more at stake here than her own honor. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, and I mean,
she even says before she kills Otachi, "This is for my family."
Yeah, exactly. And what I like is that it's not just that. There's more to it than that, because she keeps on fighting.
And I mean, honestly, if either of them should be as pissed off as she is, it's him, because not only did he see his brother die, he felt it,
That's another thing. His brother was in his mind when he died. I mean, essentially, he mentally died with his brother. That's fucked up.
I want to get into this since we're on the subject now. The movie doesn't cover this, but the graphic novel does, and so does the first draft. And there's a reason why they died, and it's not because of knife head or any malfunction or because they disobeyed orders. In the graphic novel, they covered that a couple of weeks ago. They met this girl that they both got into, and Relay was going to ask her out, but as soon as they started drifting, he got into the memory where his brother started making out with this chick, and Relay gets pissed in the middle of battle, and it kind of compromises their fighting abilities. And since he keeps drifting into that memory, they start losing the fight, and they lose to Knifehead. So it's in the first draft and the graphic novel, it's basically Relay's fault, although the movie doesn't emphasize on that or explore it.
And I mean, that's a neat idea, but I think I kind of preferred having him and his brother be more of a well-oiled machine, because then when the tragedy happens, it just hits him that much harder.
Well, what it succeeds in the finished product for me, and again, I haven't read that draft, so I don't know what it adds to it personally. But based on what you're telling me, based on the film we got, I like it better because we get to like these characters a lot quicker. And I feel like the movie gets more done in a more efficient amount of time by just having us have this bond. And I mean, they talk about, a woman at one point, and we don't know. I don't know if it's the same one that you're describing. They just bring it up more briefly in the film. I think that their bond is there as a lot more of a way of establishing this universe and establishing the likability of our main character. I think it works better for the finished film and the broader scope they're going for with the finished film. If that makes any sense. But Yeah, so it's interesting to hear all these differences because honestly, I wouldn't have minded them if the film would have had a longer opening. I think I would have been okay with it, but just at least for what we got, I thought that the quicker prologue worked better for getting us moving. Now, there's one. Now that we're kind of back to the opening, there's one major thing we haven't covered yet. The coastal wall is one of the dumbest ideas ever contrived by a government ever.
Yeah, I know. How did they think this was going to work? The great, building a modern equivalent of the Great Wall of China is not going to stop a kaiju. I mean, maybe if they had expanded it more, maybe if it had like some sort of force field system or something.
Well, my problem is how the fuck are they going to trade by sea now?
What I love about
I mean,
that idea is that it seems kind of like real world esque because okay, let's say a kaiju did appear in the Pacific. Most likely, the government will have more faith in building a giant wall than building a giant robot in real life.
very true.
And I really love how they emphasize that all of these governments, these united governments, have faith in the wall than they do in the Jaegers anymore.
Well, I mean, I'm not criticizing the film for doing it. I'm just saying that the government is stupid for thinking that'll work. But here's what I like about it. It kind of brings a sense of realism into it because building a wall is cheaper than building giant robots. And that's brought up and that's emphasized really well because the only way they're paying these workers is via food. And if you're building these Jaegers, you gotta pay money, motherfucker. You can't just you can't pay off the people who are giving you the supplies to build these Jaegers with food. But these workers who are poor, who have been crippled by the kaiju attacks, they kind of are like, fuck this, I'm just gonna eat. What I also like is that there's this great sense of urgency built into the building of the wall and the return of the Jaegers because there's that scene where Raleigh and his fat sidekick, who's in the movie for 2 seconds, are watching the news broadcast, and it looks like there's like 5 TVs in the fucking place, and they're just like, there was a kaiju that did this today, and the Jaeger barely stopped it. It was the one in Sydney where it broke through the coastal wall, and they start screaming, "What the fuck are we slaving for then?" Because you just see one of these kaiju just burst through the wall. And I thought that was really, really cool, and it again built this sense of urgency into it, and it also emphasizes why Raleigh is so quick to decide to return to the Jaeger program.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing I did like about the coastal idea thing is clearly this is not an intelligent plan that somebody comes up with. Clearly building a giant wall to keep a kaiju out is a desperate act, and so I think it kind of works in that regard, is that the government...
Oh, it absolutely does, totally.
They're on their last legs at this point. They know the Jaeger program is failing, and so they have to come up with another idea quick to make the people still feel somewhat safe, so they just say, fuck it, we'll build a big wall.
Yeah, you almost think that maybe it's more like a psychological thing. Like, we know that it's not really equipped to keep the kaiju out, but if we build a wall, people are going to feel safer, and they're going to put their trust back into our government, as opposed to they're constantly criticizing us because we're constantly being attacked by kaiju.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, if it were me, they know where this portal is, they know where all the monsters are coming out. I would have surrounded that thing with like mines and shit.
Well, but they state that doesn't work. They write that idea off because they say that anything that goes near the portal blows up.
No, I mean, I'm not talking about trying to send anything through. They could just, like, fortify the area around it so, the kaiju come out, and then they have to fight their way to get far away from it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I thought that was a little bit unusual, how there's no, like, built-up bases around the portal.
Yeah.
I think that would have been something that would have been cool, is, like, if there's, like, a bunch of, like, aircraft carriers just surrounding that portal, just with either Jaegers on them or just weapons just pointed at it, so that way the kaiju are at least stalled when they come out. I thought that would have been a cool idea. I also like the idea of categorizing the kaiju. I thought that was a really interesting idea, especially in our modern age of constant hurricanes. That definitely hit a little bit hit close to home for me as someone who lived through Sandy. It was just really cool to be like, Category 4 kaiju heading towards this city. I was like, that's fucking badass.
Yeah, because
I really love the fact that well, from my opinion, they kind of treat the kaijus as destructive forces of nature. And there's even a line that Raleigh says at the end of the prologue when he's about to fight a knife head. that you can fight the Hurricane with a Jaeger.
That's exactly what I was about to say, and that's another reason that the whole category system works so well.
Yeah, I thought that was... It made these things feel badass. Like, you can do anything when you're behind the wheel of a Jaeger. I'm like, badass. Except beat up Knifehead, apparently. Well, it's not a problem. It actually really works in the film's favor because it's like... It builds up this sense of... It almost builds up this sense of complacency. Like, this has been going on for so long, and the Jaegers have been succeeding up until now, that once the Jaegers start falling... You know, it's a big problem because we got so complacent with dealing with the kaiju.
Yeah, I mean, at that point in the movie, Beckett's character is very cocky about the whole thing.
Yeah, and he's not a cocky character in the rest of the movie.
No, he learns the lesson.
Absolutely. I thought that was fantastic as well. Just that, you know, that sense of complacency you get. And that's where the movie fucking opens. Again, I can't emphasize enough how much I liked that. That we open with the complacency. I thought that was fantastic. And again, I had no idea what direction the movie was going to take if that's where we start.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was absolutely fantastic. You know, and I love all the stuff with the montages. Again, it gets a lot of storytelling done quickly. I love that opening newsreel where they're just talking about how the Jaegers got used for propaganda. I thought that was really fantastic. Let's see what else. What else didn't we touch really? Oh, okay. Let me bring this up quick. And this is a small point. Did you guys think the scientists were too over the top?
Not Guy from Torchwood, but the other one, yeah, a little.
How about you, Gorizard? Did you think they were too over the top, or do you think they fit in this universe?
I thought they fit. I love Charlie Day's performance, but I love every single one of Charlie Day's performance, and I thought that he and that character from Torchwood is that what it is?
Yeah, Doctor Who spin-off.
I felt like that was like a perfect character match and perfect actors to attach to those characters because it's just like from a writer's point of view, it's like these characters are dialogue crazy, and it's obviously they're written there for comic relief, but as well as to explain the kaiju's exposition, lack of a better word.
Right, exactly.
But
yeah, I mean,
they're
yeah, I mean
fits,
those two have pretty good on-screen chemistry. Also, I mean, it's they kind of feel like Spock and Bones from Star Trek.
Yeah, totally. Well, they're wildly entertaining. There's obviously a little bit of Tony Stark in Charlie Day's character, definitely. Just with how just how rock starish he treats the whole thing. It's very Tony Stark, and that in a good way.
I love the fact that he has a kaiju tattoo.
Well, I also love how he's a kaiju lover. I'm like, oh, those kind of people. Because I love how that's a thing, how, like, there are kaiju hippies. I think that's fantastic. I think that's a really cool idea and funny. Because he just has tattoos of just all these kaiju on his arm. And I love the part where Raleigh looks at him and says, oh, I killed that one. And he's like, you met this one? And he's like, yeah, it wasn't a pleasant experience. I thought that was really cool. I see, because I've been hearing a lot of criticism that the scientists are too cartoony. I'm like, did you watch the same movie?
I don't mean to interrupt, but now that I think about it, of course, we all know that this is an homage to mechas, kaiju, and animes. Charlie Day and Ben Gorman's characters, they kind of remind me of those type of characters you see in animes, where they're over the top, but they're the funny, likable characters that you want to see more in the shows.
I mean, I feel like these are the C-3PO and the R2-D2 of this story, except they have more bearing on the plot.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, they're absolutely essential to the plot because they're the ones who tell them how to fucking beat the kaiju in the end.
Which, I mean, that was a really neat idea, the fact that you had to have that genetic code.
Yeah, that was cool.
Because it works kind of like the human immune system. And so that was an interesting... I thought that was a really clever idea.
I also loved the look of the aliens version of the portal. I thought that was fucking creepy. Because they just go through almost like this fleshy, like almost giant artery. And I started to wonder, are these aliens operating out of another kaiju? Like, is their spaceship or their homeworld just a giant kaiju?
Or it
That
could
would
be
be
that
so cool.
they could operate on organic technology, like I don't mean to get off topic, but in the original Godzilla '94 script, the Atlanteans that created Godzilla used biological technology, and it eventually all decayed away because there was no evidence that these technologies existed. Maybe the aliens in Rim perform technologies in this way as well.
Well, I mean, again, there's definitely some 95 gamma in there as well in that regard, and that's definitely possible. I just thought that'd be awesome if they operated, if their base was a giant kaiju.
A giant planet-sized kaiju. It's like Category 10 or something.
It's like that thing in Doctor Who: Rings of Akatan.
Oh God.
Just the god isn't the thing that's in the cage; it's the planet it's on, and you're just like, the Doctor's just like, oh fuck me. Genius. Anyway, but I thought that was really, really cool. I love the last fight scene. It's just so cool. I mean, I like the one in Hong Kong more just because it's a lot more classic Kaiju Rumble. But, dudes, there is a scene where there's a nuclear explosion that causes the ocean to rise up and then fall back down on top of Gypsy Danger. How fucking beast was that? I just thought that was so cool. How we just saw like this mountain of water coming down on top of our main characters. I thought that was beast.
Right.
Yeah, that was a really good visual. That's another thing about, you know, what I was saying earlier. You know, everything in this movie has weight. You know, you feel like these are big things happening, which you don't get that with a lot of poorly done CG, and that's just another example of how the effects in this movie were so badass.
It's one of those things that makes this movie stand out in a sea of mediocrity these days. And why you should fucking see it. Because this movie, it's just one of the most memorable movies I've seen in a long ass time. But to get back to the scientists, I thought that they were really, really interesting. I love the idea of drifting with a kaiju. I thought that was genius. And I mean, I kind of saw it coming how Hannibal Chow became who he was by drifting with a kaiju as well. Because I'm like, because the minute that Charlie Day's character did that, and then I realized, oh wait, Hannibal Chow has sunglasses on. I'm like, oh yeah, he's definitely done it before too, and that's why he knows so much about them. And he's like, it's a stupid fucking idea because the kaiju can track you now because they have a hive mind mentality. I'm like, that is a cool-ass idea. I love it when the kaiju start going after Charlie Day. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and he's in that bunker, and the Asian lady's like, the kaiju want the little dude.
I thought that was awesome.
I felt like that was sort of a callback to this idea that was sort of floating around in the 90s Godzilla movies, where you would have, you know, the idea of psychic characters. Of course, this isn't done through psychic means, but it's the same idea, you know, interacting with the kaiju's mind, you know.
Yeah, totally. Having a connection to them, like it breaks the barrier between the street level and the monster's head, kind of, if that makes any sense. Where it's like in some kaiju movies, you get like this weird like almost alienation between the monster element and the human element. And Pacific Rim had them just mix right together. I thought really, really well. It's an insane.
That's one of the good things about having your humans driving giant robots.
Yo, totally.
Is that it just completely bridges that gap.
And what also does that in that same vein is that when the monsters start ripping into the Jaegers, we see it inside the cockpit. Like, we see a scene where the kaiju rips the chest out and it looks right at the people. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was so creepy and so fucking awesome. Because in the one Godzilla movie where we got people actually inside Mechagodzilla piloting it, that never happened. Nothing like that ever happens. It feels very alienated. But in this film, they bridged the gap and they bridged it really, really well. But I also love the scene, and again, this is just part of Guillermo Del Toro's professional directing style, where Charlie Day is inside the bunker, and you just hear the kaiju coming closer, and then as it starts banging on the fucking asphalt, I thought that was so insanely well done. And also then, that tongue coming down that feels for him, it was so cool.
Oh.
You guys still there?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, I was like, oh, it's like
thought
this dead silence.
I was just
Oh.
salivating for a moment.
Let me ask you guys something. There was one shot in this movie that I thought was very strange. So, you know the one where Gypsy Danger's fist goes through the building, rams through, like, you know, level upon level upon level, and then it lightly taps one of those swinging math ball things,
yeah.
and it starts going? I thought that was so unnecessary. I thought that should have got cut. It was so weird, especially where it was, in the middle of a giant fight scene.
Yeah, I mean, it got a little bit of a chuckle out of me, but yeah, it was unnecessary.
It was so weirdly placed. Go ahead, dude.
I kind of felt that I understood what that scene was, and that was kind of like back to where Relay was fighting all these candidates who were trying to be partnered up with him, and when he fought Mako, you know, he stopped his staff inches before Mako's head or whatever limb he was aiming at, and I thought, you know, that same principle applied to his combat with Gypsy Danger. And I thought that that was kind of like what they were going for, or what Del Toro was going for. It was about precision, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it could be there to emphasize just a level of control, but I mean, if his fist is already going through the building, I don't think it would matter at that point.
No, I think it's completely unnecessary, and it's such a strange place to put that because we're in the middle of the best action scene in the movie. So I thought that was really, really weird. I thought that there could have been a better time, or it should have just been cut. I thought that was a very strange place. I thought it was completely unnecessary, and it kind of took me out of the action scene. It was just very, very strange. But again, that fucking fight scene is otherwise flawless. It's just insanely badass. Just the level of destruction you see, the way the monsters and the Jaegers move is awesome. I mean, did you guys' jaws drop when Crimson Typhoon is fighting fuck, what is it called again?
Otachi.
Yeah, that one. And I am terrible with names like that. And then Leatherback jumps out of the water onto its back. Did you guys' jaws drop? Because mine did. Because I'm like, holy fuck! There are two giant monsters fighting a giant robot.
I wouldn't necessarily say my jaw dropped. I'm more like, in my mind, I was like, oh yes, because I already knew who Leatherback. I already knew who these kaijus were, because they already released, you know, the trademarks and the names and the designs of the main kaijus that they featured, and of course one of them was Leatherback, and I always thought that Leatherback looked like a combination of Orga and Dagara from Rebirth of Mothra 2, and he just looks like a badass kaiju. And that shot that you see in the in the first trailer of Leatherback roaring and there's lightning happening in the background, I thought that was probably one of the most iconic shots from Pacific Rim in general.
Oh, totally.
And that image always stuck in my mind ever since the first trailer, and I said to myself, this is going to be my main kaiju. And of course he jumps out, and I say to myself, oh, there he is. There's my main boy.
There's my boy.
Oh my god. My jaw didn't have a chance to drop because my mouth was just open throughout that entire sequence when they're in the bay.
It broke the floor because it fell a little more.
I mean, and while we're on the subject of Leatherback, I love that scene where he's like, I think this guy's dead, but let's check for a pulse.
Oh, I thought that was fucking genius. And he just blows it apart until he kills the heart. And I thought that was also a good callback to the opening.
Yeah.
Because the reason why they lost that fight was because they thought Knifehead was dead.
Yeah.
And they moved on, and that's why his brother got killed. I thought that was a great callback without it being, you know, again, hit over the head. It was just, let's make sure he's dead.
Yeah, I mean, it was so badass, and it felt like a classic thing, like from an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, because you have the setup, the whole, okay, let's check for the pulse, and then they shoot it, there's your setup, and then you have the one-liner where he's like, no pulse.
I like you, Leatherback. That's why I'm going to kill you last. I thought you were going to kill me last! I lied.
On top of that, anyway. isn't that called the pulse cannon?
Wait, isn't it called the plasma cannon?
Yeah, I thought it was plasma.
I always get pulse and plasma confused.
I'm gonna look that shit up, because if it's not, I'm gonna be pissed, because I thought that was a reference to the plasma grenades from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. Hang on.
Getting on Gypsy Danger's weaponry, I'm
Sure,
kind of
go
like,
ahead.
that little circular thing on her chest. I was kind of upset that they used it once. Well, technically they used it twice, but you never see Gypsy Danger actually use it on Knifehead. But I wished the circular thing on her chest, I forgot what it was called. I wish that would have been used much more, because that's one of the most iconic features about that Jaeger. Not only the visor, but also that circular thing on her chest.
Right?
Yeah, it kind of like it's very reminiscent of classic mechas from the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, didn't it kind of remind you guys of the main laser cannon on the 75 Mechagodzilla?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was a cool reference. And what I also liked was it was specific to Gypsy Danger. Not all of the Jaegers had that. I thought that was really cool. Trying to find the name of that gun now, because I'm pretty sure it's plasma, but there's no way I can be sure.
Yeah, I'm almost certain it's plasma.
But we could be wrong. I mean, we're talking to the guy who fucking read the script. Here's Gypsy Danger. So let's see. Hang on, guys. I might cut this part out a little bit because I can't find it. Equipment. Vents. I can't find it. It doesn't say. It's not telling me. Why isn't it fucking telling me?
We're gonna have to wait until the Blu-ray.
Ha 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 ha! Fuck you! I'm going to see it again for sure. Yeah, I can't find it. Whatever. We'll say it our own personal ways. Anyway, oh yeah, but the weapons are badass. I mean, just that moment when they reveal that the Australian Jaeger can shoot rockets out of its chest, I thought that was badass.
I love the fact that a Striker Eureka is the fastest Jaeger in their arsenal, and I'm starting to think that Striker Eureka may be my new favorite Jaeger, given that Crimson Typhoon can get his ass kicked in the first 5 seconds of a fight.
Yeah, I mean, mine's still Gypsy Danger just because it's the main one. I love the design. You know what also really stuck out to me was the fact that the eyes look a lot like Kiyu's eyes. I thought that was really cool.
Well, I mean, and it makes sense for Striker. Was it Striker Eureka?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense for that to be the fastest one because that's the newest model.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because Gypsy Danger is 2 marks down from the current.
Because I mean, the oldest one, the ones that the Russians drive, it's a lot slower, and it has that old school thing from like that Mechagodzilla used, where they have to like fly it in with the helicopters.
Yeah. Otherwise, no, they did it for all of them.
Yeah, but in that one scene, it was the only one that was doing it. In the one scene, you had like the other 2 were the other 3 were like walking through the bay, and then all of a sudden you see the other one come overhead.
Right, but when they travel long distance, they'll have to use that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely the clunkiest of all of them. I mean, also when you just look at the cockpit, it looks fucking old. And you just see the armor they're wearing, and it looks old. But yeah, I love how it distinguished between each of the Jaegers. It was just a really really cool, and again, really well conceived and developed and executed sci-fi world. But I mean, my favorite's still Gypsy Danger. I think that my second favorite's probably Crimson Typhoon, just because the concept of a 3-armed giant robot is awesome. It's funny, I think my favorite shot in the whole movie is when Gypsy Danger punches Leatherback in both sides of his face, and the face kind of falls apart, and then it comes back together and he roars into the camera. I thought that was badass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the moments where I was like, oh, and ah! I was screaming at that part. It was just so cool.
From the first draft, there was one of the Jaegers that didn't make it to the final cut, but actually makes a cameo in the prologue. It was Tactic Ronin, who actually Striker Eureka replaces in the final film. And actually, the characters for Tactic Ronin are actually much more likable than the father and son one. But anyways, Tactic Ronin was like this. It's described as this Ultraman Jaeger.
That's awesome.
The way it's described, its fighting abilities is compared to Bruce Lee. That's literally the definition of its fighting abilities.
Yeah,
awesome.
We needed a karate robot in this movie. That's the only thing it was missing.
Absolutely. Because I mean, they can move limber enough in order to do stuff like that. Because I mean, they write out any reason why they can't because of the whole neural interface thing. Because they're moving them via their bodies. If they were using them via like stick control, it wouldn't make a lot of sense for them to use flexibility. But since as long as they're able to like move them with their own body parts. I mean, if you design them right, they could be as limber as you want. They could do like kung fu and shit. So that was a little bit of a missed up. I mean, it just the fact that we didn't see a lot of it. Again, it's in there. I mean, some of the moves Gypsy Danger pulls off is kind of martial arts level, like that one scene where Leatherback throws it into the harbor and it crashes through all those buildings, and it does kind of a backflip rollover onto its back legs. I just thought that was badass, and you can't do that with a stick control robot. You'd have to use like thrusters or something. Like Kaiju would be able to do that. So that was really cool.
One thing I think is a missed opportunity, kind of. They clearly demonstrate that both hands of the Jaeger are able to do the plasma cannon. Why do they never use both of them at once?
That was weird. Well, wait, do they? Can they use both hands?
I don't know.
I think it's only one because you can't have a sword and a plasma cannon in the same hand because they both have to transform into it.
No, but like I'm pretty sure that they like switched it up. Like I'm pretty sure there was scenes where they used the right and there were scenes where they used the left, if I'm remembering it correctly.
Mister, I read the first draft. Can both hands use the plasma cannon?
Because at the beginning, the one kaiju ripped one of the hands off. Remember?
Yeah, but I don't think that was the one that had the plasma cannon on it. Fuck, I don't remember now. Well, because the part they rip off is the Jaeger's right arm.
Right.
And they shoot it with the plasma cannon before that. So I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. I could have swore that it was the right arm the first time.
I don't remember now. Because I actually think you're right now. Gorizard, do you remember anything from the script that would have confirmed or denied what we're saying?
A whole bunch of stuff from the script got changed. Even up to the characters' names got changed.
Fuck. Well, it doesn't really matter. It's still badass and shit.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember now. But also, I love the concept of if you break the robot's arm, you break the pilot's arm. I thought that made a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I mean when the guy pulls himself out of the head or whatever when it's in Alaska, he's like bleeding and shit.
Yeah, oh totally, he's wrecked. I like the style of the cockpits. I like how when they lift their legs, the robot lifts its legs. I like that visual aesthetic. Just overall, all the designs are just fucking awesome. It's just a really well-designed sci-fi world. One of the best that I've seen in a while. Well, gents, we're coming up on 2 hours, and it's getting late over here, so I think we should start to wrap this up. But I have one more thing to ask. Gorizard promised me a story before we started recording, and now that we're kind of running out of juice to say specifically about the movie, I demand you to tell us that story now.
All right, you guys are gonna think I'm gross, but I don't care.
Probably, but we think that anyway, so it's okay. We'll still love you.
My Asian fetish. All right.
Oh God!
I knew that was coming. I knew that was
going to be part of it.
From like the scene in the movie where she's under the umbrella and you just see her, whatever. Anyway, go on.
Go ahead.
All right. All right. So after Pacific Rim, I snuck into Grown Ups 2. And it was 10 minutes before the movie was even about to start. So me and my friends, we take some middle row seats since it wasn't even that full as Pacific Rim was. There's this large drink right next to me, and it's abandoned. No one's sitting around us. And I just take that drink and drink off it. I assumed that somebody left it there from the previous viewing. And so...
You drank it? What the fuck?
Yes, I drank someone else's drink.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Then, the owners of that drink came back.
Oh!
There's an awkward moment.
Basically, the first thing they said, you guys are in our spot, these were our seats, and we're like, oh, okay. Then they see the drink, and the chick asks, did you just take a sip off my drink? And I lie, of course. I say, oh no, I pretended. And for the rest of the movie, they didn't touch the drink at all. I was it was just one guy and his girlfriend, and I was afraid that they were gonna put two and two together and figure out that I actually did drink from that cup twice and kick my ass. But there was three of us and only one of him, so I'm assuming he didn't want to do anything. But
yeah, man, you could have fucking fucked him up.
he was taller than me though. But
yeah, but it's fucking three of you guys.
yeah, it's three of us. But
just watched a movie where giant robots beat up giant monsters. You guys were all probably pumped up.
Well,
and shit.
I was. If anything like that was about to ensue, I was ready to get down because Pacific Rim hyped me up.
Yeah, man, you're just like, I'm gonna fire my fucking plasma cannon in your fucking face. He's like, are you gonna fucking come on my face? What the fuck? No!
What I wanted to do was do that thing Gypsy Danger did to Leatherback, the shockwave thing.
And just fucking punch him in the face, and it doesn't fucking come back together.
No, he says, what? You're gonna jizz in my face? And he's just like, I can't. I just saw Pacific Rim. I don't have any left.
Yeah, but that's what happened. I drank someone else's drink that I thought was abandoned. They came back, and I think they figured out that I drank from it, and they didn't touch it for the rest of the movie. But it was their fault for leaving their shit behind. Who does that?
Well, I mean, you never, if you have seats, you don't leave the fucking seat. You always leave someone there to watch them.
Right.
I mean, this is just fucking common sense.
Yeah, but you don't leave your concessions behind. You don't leave your popcorn behind. You don't leave your drinks behind. It's like leaving your car keys in the ignition. Who does that?
I mean, what kind of idiot does that, guys, right?
Right. But in their defense, they were blonde people. I'm just kidding.
Oh, fuck you! Fuck your shit!
Sir, I may not be anymore, but I was born blonde, and I take offense.
Yeah, fuck you. Anyway. How was Grown Ups 2, by the way?
I actually loved it. I thought I was going to end up hating it. I went in there with the lowest expectations possible because I saw like the first 30 minutes of Grown Ups 1, and I never got to finish it because I had to leave the theater. Not because I thought it was horrible, but other things. But I actually thought the first one was pretty funny. This one, it's so satirical and over the top. Like, okay, you'll read reviews saying, how horrible this is, and the critics basically treat this like if it were a poorly written essay, and they gave it an F. This is like one of the funniest movies I've seen in the year so far. If you have the time to see it, watch it. Don't pay for it, but just sneak into it. It's one of those feel good movies because there's so many funny moments in this, and you don't mind if I spoil one part?
I have no intention of seeing it, so go ahead.
There's this part where the actor Nick Swartzen, he plays one of those drug addict idiots, and he's basically at a Kmart, and there's one of those inflatable boats, and I think you know where I'm going with this. He pulls it, all of a sudden the inflatable boat opens up, and it throws him across the aisles of merchandise. Like it doesn't.
That's physically impossible.
I know, but the way it is executed is hilarious. It's the highlight of the whole movie.
It's not for me. I don't understand why they don't just fucking make a movie where they play themselves, because they might as well be. I mean, it's like
The End. This is the
I heard that movie. I haven't seen it, but I heard it was genius for that.
It is. Okay, never mind. This is the End is one of the funniest movies I've seen this year. Grown Ups, second.
Just fucking go for it, man. Don't fucking bullshit around like, oh, they've got character and they're fucking married to hot chicks. I'm just like, don't even worry about their fucking families. No one gives a fuck about their stupid ass kids. Just fucking make a movie where they just go out on like a man's weekend. That could be hilarious. I don't know. It doesn't need. You don't have to go into the fucking fictional bullshit.
I just don't try to have a story if you don't need one, because then it just opens up to a whole new world of criticism.
Yeah, because it's just, you might as well just be playing yourself. Adam Sandler is Adam Sandler. Rob Schneider is fucking Rob Schneider. Schneider, whatever the fuck his name is. It's unnecessary. It's completely unnecessary, and whoa, I'm stuttering. I thought the first movie was mildly entertaining for that reason, because they might as well have been playing themselves, and I would have liked it so much more if it was like This Is the End, and they just played them fucking selves. But anyway, this is not a review of Grown Ups 2. This is a review of Pacific Rim. I think I've wrapped up on everything I want to bring up. We basically analyzed every fucking scene, which was my intention, so I appreciate you guys sticking with it through me. But what do you say we go around and give final recommendations and final scores? And we all rate at a different system, so just use your own personal system to score it. To think of it like what we used to do with ZGC. Let's start with SUPERDM64. Your overall recommendation, do you recommend it? Do you say don't go in your final score?
People, see this movie. I don't care if you're a kaiju fan or not. I think this bridges the gap. I think anybody can enjoy this movie. And I mean, all the issues that I have with it are very much nitpicks. I'm not even going to take a point off it. I'm just going to give it a 5 out of 5 because this is an amazing movie. Just on every level. It's not just great because it's the first real kaiju movie that we've had in years. It's good because it's just a good movie, like, objectively. So go see it, and that's all I have to say.
Gorizard.
Yes, this is a must-see summer film. It is the ultimate summer film, and as a legendary director Hideo Kojima puts it, the ultimate otaku film for all mecha, anime, and kaiju fans. This film is wildly entertaining, fun, and just a very good time at the theaters. And I agree with many of the critics who say that this is the reason why people go to the movies, and this is the reason why summer blockbusters are fun. In an age where we live in remakes, sequels, adaptions, and reimaginings, I am glad that Legendary took a gamble on Travis Beacham's idea of giant robots versus giant monsters and created an original property not based on any existing franchise and delivered us Pacific Rim. It was an homage to that genre. It wasn't adapting anything, but it became its own thing, but gave a love letter to those genres. And this is a film that demands multiple viewings, and I will watch it a second time because I loved it the first time, and I want to see it again the second time. It's one of those films. Those films that demand a lot of viewings.
And your final score?
I don't do scores anymore, but if I had to put a score, I would go back to my original scores and just give it a straight up 4 out of 4 all the way.
You stopped doing scores?
Yeah. I usually I just give my overall statements in my reviews.
I can't get away from the numbers. I just can't. It's just kind of a good way of summarizing it. But anyway, I have to agree with everything these guys have been saying. This is the closest thing to a perfect movie I have seen in years. It is just a wet dream for me, and just I'm sure a lot of other kaiju fans out there. I mean, I talked to 2 of the #1 kaiju fans on the internet, in my opinion, in this video, and I think that they absolutely nailed my thoughts, and I'm sure a lot of other people's thoughts out there. This is a rebirth of a genre that's very near and dear to our hearts. It's an amazing addition to that genre. It's one of the most entertaining films. It's definitely the most entertaining movie I've seen all summer. And I thought this was going to be a weak summer because it started out with disappointing me with Iron Man 3. And then it kind of elevated me because I loved Star Trek Into Darkness, and then Man of Steel was awesome too. And then Pacific Rim just came along and said, fuck those superhero movies and those science fiction films. This is where you belong. And I'm like, this is like, it is the closest thing to a perfect movie I've seen probably since The Dark Knight. I'll go that far. And that's just speaking general cinema. Just that it's the closest thing to a perfect movie I've seen since The Dark Knight. I just loved every frame of it. I can't wait to see it again. I didn't want it to end. I just wanted to have it keep going. I wanted Guillermo Del Toro and Travis Beacham to keep exploring this universe, to keep giving me more quadrants of this fascinating kaiju-inflicted world, of these, giant robots, of these people that fight kaiju on a daily basis. I just thought that it was the closest thing to a perfect movie I've seen in a long time, which is why I'm going to give it the very unusual rating of a 4.95 out of 5. And here's the reason why. The motivations for the aliens kind of stopped the movie dead for a couple minutes for me, because I was like, really, that's it? And it was enough for me to take off something, but I wanted it to be that little because this otherwise was a perfect movie for me. It's a major nitpick, and again, it's totally inconsequential, but because it made me stop for a minute in a movie I was otherwise engrossed in, I thought it was worth mentioning. I thought it was worth taking something off for, so I wanted to make it as small as realistically possible, so I invented a new rating of 4.95 out of 5. Do I recommend it? Fuck yes. See this movie, I beg of you. Because there's a lot of concerns right now that it's not going to make its money back, that it's not going to do the business that it should, that it deserves, and I really hope that doesn't happen. So please, please, please support good action movies, support good movies, and support the rebirth of the kaiju genre, and go out there and see this movie, because I promise you, you won't be disappointed. It is an engaging movie from beginning to end. Every part of it works. It's just a genius film. The visuals are fucking sexy. The action is the best action I have seen in years. It's just a phenomenal piece of movie making. And you will definitely walk out satisfied. It's, again, closest thing to a perfect movie I've seen in a long time. Again, 4.95 out of 5 for me. So, that's our thoughts on Pacific Rim. Fucking see it, ladies and gentlemen. And you heard it right here from Zazubar, Gorizard, and Super DM. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me this evening. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did.
Hell yeah, we did.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Just thank you so much for sitting down and discussing with me. I had to talk to kaiju fans who were as diehard, if not more diehard than I was, and kind of reaffirm my thoughts and make sure that I wasn't crazy, but I was, loving it as much as I was, and kind of having this wet dream come to life that I did.
Yeah, it's a shame that Adam's theater system sucks.
I know this video is not complete without Adam, but again, we're gonna get him on the channel sometime in the next month and get his thoughts out there. I'm sure he's gonna do a review anyway. But we're doing some kind of reunion video at some point this month, supposedly, where it's kind of a revival of World War Z, and I guess we'll cover Pacific Rim again there, which I'm fine with. I don't mind talking about this movie again because I'm gonna see it again this week. But until then, hold out for us discussing the film with Adam and the reunion of the Sons of Sarazawa. But anyway, in the meantime, go ahead and subscribe to Gorizard and Super DM's channel. They both put out good stuff. Well, at least Gorizard does. Super DM doesn't put out shit. But you know what? Be nice. Support good YouTube users, and Super DM is a great YouTube user. You have to post more shit, dude.
I want to. It's just a matter of time.
Fair enough. But go ahead, subscribe to him anyway. Support him. He's a great guy. And pester him to put out stuff, because I think he's got plenty of potential to put out amazing stuff. Anyway, so thank you very much for watching our mega spoiler analysis of Pacific Rim. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys found it entertaining to hear some kaiju fans analyze the film. But I think that'll about do it. So look out for some more videos from me and some kaiju related videos coming very soon for me involving the Big G and something about the Big G I haven't talked about yet. Start getting excited if you like that sort of stuff. Then, of course, we've got other stuff coming here on the channel very, very soon. But until then, I'm Zazubar.
And I'm Gorizard.
And I'm Super DM64.
And until then, we are canceling the apocalypse!
We're going fishing.
See you later, guys.